Well, good morning, guys. It's 8:49 in the morning, West Coast time for a chilly 40 degrees out here. I think still. It's November 19th, 2024, the Weaver Agency of Roseman, California. Okay, so I was railing and railing concerning about Oklahoma, but the red states are slowly going into this situation. Last year, Texas Governor Greg Abbott wanted to introduce the Bible into public education, and there was a long discussions and fights over this one. I think a lot of articles I'm finding out, and not to mention videos about it. But they still want to become a Christian nation. They still want to be Christian nationalists. They still want to insult people left and right about their intelligence and their faith. They want to make sure that people only have one language, one faith, one, and this is the only thing that they matter. Because with the one they can control, but if it's plurality, forget it. And not to mention grift. Much like we got Elon Musk grifting off of Trump left and right. They're both sucking on each other. They're both leeches. But in this situation, we've got the Texas School Board deciding whether or not they actually do want to go for Bible in the classes. And there's going to be lawsuits heavily from groups, not to mention teachers' unions, trying to force the issue down their throats, saying you can't do this because this is against the Constitution. When the hell does the state governor actually have power over the federal government when it comes down for the constitutional First Amendment rights? They have none. There are implied powers, yes. However, it is not going against the Constitution, and they will lose in court. So I don't know what the hell is major malfunction is except to be a corporate kiss ass or a Trump kiss ass. Even Trump still wants religion in schools. He ain't getting it. He ain't getting it. And the red states will probably say, yes, yes, because we have to be Christian. Do you? Do you really have to be Christian? You can't accept anybody else's faith? You can't even acknowledge any other faiths exist? There has to be one religion ruling everything? Are you that dense that you're turning out to be Iran? Yeah. Iran's only ruled by one religion. There can't be any other religion. If they are, oh well, guess what you could do? Disappear. But that's Iran. What do we do for America? We chase them out of one state or another state? Do we do a China routine? China's been notorious heavily on Christians. Throughout the decades, they've been telling about. There have been horror stories about that one, coming from people escaping. Not to mention the Far East. So, what is it about Christianity that makes us the hunted, hated kind? Except for many versions of the Bible that you're still trying to be reconciled with. And now we got the Trump Bible, and everything else has to be grift on that one. Grift for here, grift for there, grift. The computer's booting up. So, how do we deal with this one? I said before in my earlier videos and my latest videos, I blame the voters because they allowed this shit to happen. They think so strongly that people have to be Christians. They can't accept anybody else's religion or faith. They have to have this because they say so. I was dealing with someone outside who was from Oklahoma and had been through it, and they said they're strong in faith. Yeah, that's nice being strong in faith, but are you going to be knocking out everyone else's? You have to force everybody to be Christian? Is that how it's going to work? And even in public education, where they get the public money, I mean, it's taxpaying money coming out of your pockets, to pay for kids' education, that they have to be indoctrinated into Christianity? Does that work? It's one thing if it's a public school. Private schools, I can understand getting away with it. Is that why they wanted charter schools all over the damn place? To make them private and therefore not susceptible to any rules or regulations, so not even the Constitution? They think they're going to be exempt from that? You still have the First Amendment rules to go against. But unfortunately, because of the Supreme Court decisions we've had, even back in 1963, it was telling us, no, public education cannot have it. There are court cases regarding this situation. And it's getting harder and harder to deal with it. Because they want. Well, they can want all they want. It's not going to happen. Pause. All right. Maybe well before my time of being born, I was a child of the 60s. I ain't telling you the year anyway, but there was a court case back in 1962 that came up through the ranks. It was called Engel versus Vitale. Now, according to the U.S. courts.gov, and there's educational resources about this one here for students to read about court cases. To say it, New York state law required public schools to open each day with the Pledge of Allegiance and a non denominational prayer in which the students recognized their dependence upon God. The law allowed students to absent themselves from the activity if they found it objectionable. A parent sued on behalf of his child, arguing that the law violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, made it applicable to the states through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. The issue was whether schools supported the prayer in the public schools violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Now, First Amendment, we're going to get into the U.S. Constitution here. We're going to get into the amendments here, so I can bring you up to speed on this one. Here we go. 13th. Here we go. So go to constitutionalcenter.org and regarding the constitutional and full text. First Amendment, Congress shall make no law, that's the federal government, respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging their freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. But it says Congress. Now the problem is they're always debating about this one in the states because they have the implied powers in that one. And they always assume that the implied powers would say, well, Congress, federal government. Well, they've been trying to make more judicial review on it regarding what we're dealing with of our freedom of speech. They wanted to make it absolutely clear that there's not going to be no form of government. Now, they're indicating that the federal government will not recognize a formal form of religion. They will not. They didn't want to end up like Europe or any other kind of country that has an established religion to be the dominant law. I'm going to look at it that way. They will make no law respecting an establishment of religion. We can have all the religion to celebrate and worship because that is the freedom we have. We have separation of church and state at this point. This is what it's telling us: the separation of church and state. We want state to be one way. We want church the other way. It's like what they were talking about in the Bible somewhere, I think in the New Testament, about render unto Caesar, which is the government, which is the law. Render unto God, which is faith. But how the hell does the faith trump law? We've seen this in 1979 in Iran. If you want to be a little more better on that one. So Iran managed to make law absolute for religion. Religion was going to be the absolute above everything. Meaning we could have all the implied freedoms we want over here, but the problem is, if it's against God, against what our religious leaders say, then screw it. Who the hell are these religious leaders in the first place? All these self-appointed jackasses coming over here are going to be telling me that because of their opinion, their ego, their megalomania, they're the voice of God and I should obey them? Not the federal government, not the U.S. Constitution. This is what we're heading into, guys. This is what we're heading into. And I still blame the voters because they still want this damn crap. So if we become like Ron with the Sharia law being in effect, as in these religious leaders having more and more control over everybody, I blame you guys. You're the ones that screwed us over on this one. You guys are the ones who wanted this damn thing in the first place. You think God is absolute and everything else, and therefore, because you think you are a representative of God, it's going to be your voice? Give me a fucking break on that one. Even some of the respected leaders I know out there regarding religion and regarding a faith say, on it. On it. But we want the egomaniacs and the megalomaniacs to have their way and their say. It's one thing to say it under the pulpit, but government power, and you're going to make the changes, and this is what we've got right now currently coming into Congress, and not to mention into the presidency. And again, I blame you guys. Because you're the ones that voted the sons of bitches in the first place. You wanted religion. You wanted Sharia law. You wanted another Iran. They kept calling us the devils. We had the great Satan ruling us around the 80s. Ronald Reagan. You guys traded your soul for him. You traded your soul for the asshole. You wouldn't think God is going to be in charge of this thing? Christ never wanted in the Bible. No matter how many interpretations I kept looking at the thing, he was never telling us that he was going to establish kingdom on the earth where he's going to be ruling forever. Everyone assumed that. He's got kingdom in heaven. Heaven is beyond mortality. It's beyond us. It's the afterlife. It's where the soul, if you are of faith and you believe in it, leaves the body. Doesn't come back. Not unless somebody else is forcing it to come back and say, I got a message for him. You're staying here, you got a job to do. That was the thing for me. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I kept being told at age 4 years old, go back, go back, go back. So I came. I came back and I had to live life. Now I'm seeing everybody else not following anything except someone else is leading them over cliffs left and right. First Amendment right, I've always believed in. But there was always limitations that Congress had always imposed upon us. Not the states, but Congress. Simply put, you couldn't yell fire in a movie theater unless, of course, there was an actual fire. Otherwise, you're breaking a law. Now, sometimes the states adapted that, other towns adapted that, but it was still against the law, despite the fact there was freedom of speech. And the other things that got me pissed off, that I was seeing over this past week or two, is that the hate groups are getting more and more active in different towns. One of which I screwed up on. I thought it was one town, probably the other. Or maybe it did happen and I didn't catch it in time on that one. But still, it was ticking me off on that one. And I probably made a lot of mistakes on this one. And I'll admit it. I have to be accountable, transparent, and responsible. So this is what we're talking about. When you see masked men marching with Nazi flags, they too are exercising, and believe it or not, they got a constitutional right to do this one. Even though they are just, even though they are saying that you are hateful, you are despicable. We think so. We say so, and therefore I hate rules. Problem is, we have Constitution to back them up on this one. Sucks, but they have the right to freedom to say whatever they want. The First Amendment applies to everybody. And this is the kind of sucky thing that I kept going back over this one court case that nobody keeps talking about. Skokie. And Skokie scared the shit out of me when I was a young kid. I didn't understand the hatred and vitriol until I was actually experiencing some of that stuff coming out of people's mouths. That's one thing grandmothers would threaten their grandchildren or children to wash out their mouths if they keep spewing out that stuff because they didn't want to hear it, only because they knew about it and they probably used it in their lifetime. But they didn't want their future generation to have it, so they washed their mouths out with soap, literally. My grandmother tried. My mother did the other way. Bye, butt. Corporal punishment was a thing back in the 60s and 70s. But not in schools. But at the home, oh yeah. And if that didn't work, the silent treatment worked. But only in front of their earshots anyway. But when it came out in the schoolyard, oh yeah, every language that you would hear in any form or language. I mean, it was just outright out there, and there was no way to stop it. So if they're going to be telling you in one language or another that your mother sucks, or there's a lot of more uglier things I could say, but in another language, trust me, they could say it. If the teachers didn't understand it, they could say it, and they would, and there'd be a fight ensued. But marching up and down the street, yelling and screaming at the people left and right, "You suck! We are the chosen ones," or anything else like that. Skokie had that. I keep bringing up the Skokie versus American Nazi Party on this one, and it was ruled for the Nazi Party. But the problem is the implementations of what they wanted to do. See, in Skokie, the Nazi Party came in just to raise holy hell in the Jewish community, just to be total assholes. And the police arrested them, threw them in jail, violations of sorts, including what they were doing. And the court case has started. Of course, court cases were ruled against on a local level. It went to the appellate. Then it went to the Supreme. It was the Supreme Court that said that the American Nazi Party had the right at that time, back in the 70s, to say what they were going to say at that time. But they had the right to spew. They didn't say anything about the right to go into a certain neighborhood and cause holy hell. That would be up to the city councils and to the local ordinances. Of course, the city said, well, we'll give you a permit to march, but not in that area. We'll give you a permit to march over here. No, we want it over here. No, you're not going to get it. No, you can't do it. We have a right to say it. You have a right to say it, but you're not going to do it over here. How dare you? Supreme Court. Yeah, I said you have the right to say it, but not in this way and not over there. You want to protest? Protest over here, not over there. I don't know if it ever worked out too well for them. But this is what we're dealing with, isn't it? This is what we're dealing with. So now, with cases like that and similar to it, we have what we have set up for the First Amendment. And it's still under revision left and right. That's why our Supreme Court, in a way, when they started out, formed a judicial review without them even realizing it. They could make laws by denying or acknowledging. Madison. Madison versus Marbury, I think the court case was. Now, I was reading about it in political science because while in court case through 12, I didn't hear about it. There are a lot of court cases that you don't hear about in the classes unless you take a government class and really pay attention to what's being said. And then when you go into political science classes at community college level, when you're getting your footing, you learn a little bit more. But the books are available online. The material is available online. We've got a virtual online library out there. We've got book libraries. We've got actual hardcover. And yes, it does take some reading comprehension to understand it. Because some of the language will throw you off. That's why they kept that's what they kept saying, that you need to read, you need to read, you need to read. Despite the fact that you got political idiots over there saying, no, you don't need to be. You need to be down with the dog shit. You can't read this stuff. It's wokeism. It's liberalism. It's functioning of the government. No, it's someone else's version of it. Ah! And the only thing I can tell them is flip my finger off at them. So, we're going to hear more and more stuff coming out of political pundits on both sides. We're going to hear them do the finger pointing on everyone else's sides. I mean, just on a constant basis. And still, if the country is starting to go downhill, even worse, I cannot blame the voters. Because it only took the voters to make the decisions necessary if we wanted to make this kind of change or not. And we have to wait for the process. We have to wait the 2-year process for the midterm so we can correct anything else happening in Congress or Senate or both. We can't make any changes in the White House until 2 years after that. And hopefully during that time, term expired and we're not going to get another amendment in the process to extend the executive branch. And there won't be any Supreme Court decisions to merit that. Keep this in mind. We've already got an impeached president put back into office. The voters wanted it. So we're stuck with it now. It also means that even in the states, they still want to push religion down people's throats. And again, the voters decided. But the things I don't see, I'll hear this online grumbling, but I don't see any action happening outside. What? Feet don't work? Signs aren't there to be put out? People's voices are silent? I guess democracy is dying because America is dying. I thought you guys were all patriots. You go thermonuclear every time somebody spits on the damn flag or looks at it badly. But you won't save the country. Oh, you said Donald Trump's going to save the country. And other idiots like him. They're not. They didn't do it before. They demonstrated the first 2 years of Congress, nothing came out. Except executive orders and finger pointing and hatred and everything else. But this is what you guys wanted. You wanted it in 2016, you couldn't stand it. 2020, Dan Ray had a riot. And now 2024, you got it back again. So, what's going to happen in 2028? I wonder. Are we going to be a Christian nationalist country? I am not going to follow that logic. I'm not going to follow being a Christian nationalist because there's no such thing as a Christian nationalist. And a wokeism is somebody else's head game. It's a playground toddler game. Oh, they can call me libtard, libturd. And you know, that's a very disgusting terminology, but I accept it anyway. I may be retarded. I may be liberal. I may be a liberal retarded or retarded liberal, however they want to look at it. If I'm a liberal shithead, okay, I'm a liberal shithead. How about that one? At least I know who I am. I'm one of God's kids, like everybody else. But I'm not playing the frickin' toddler games that they got in the sandbox. You got the winners in there throwing the sand around like crazy and screaming and yelling that they won. They won. It's theirs. It's theirs. If they want anybody else to join them, they're going to have to deal with the whining and brining and everything else. Yeah, I did say brining because they're soaking in their own damn insanity. And they want it flavored for everybody. Let them have fun with it. Because every time I'm going to see a maggot out there with a red hat and a red shirt or anything else like that, I'm going to consider them the whiner babies. They're not satisfied if they lose. Sure as hell ain't satisfied if they win. They're not satisfied, period. They're not. They're going to tell people what they want. What they want, what they expect. And you know what? Deal with that one, whiner babies.